What would you say if I said you've been giving yourself poison every single day and there's not really much you can do about it? That's what we're going to discuss on today's show. So let's get started. Hi everyone, welcome to In Thy Word Live every single Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we help you open up your Bible and enhance your Bible knowledge. And we also drop videos every single Tuesday and Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you're interested in learning how you can actually enhance your Bible knowledge, then consider subscribing to the channel and obviously hitting the bell notification, as you can see on screen. Now, today's show is actually brought to you by howtowalkinthespirit.com. And if you've ever struggled with sin and want some practical ways you can overcome it, then why not get a copy of my book today for free at howtowalkinthespirit.com/book. Now, it's actually really interesting what we're going to talk about today. We've been on a series for the last 3 weeks, basically. The last 3 episodes, we've been focusing on the love of money. And it's all based on 1 Timothy 6, verse 10. You can see the key verse down below, and it's really significant because we've hit different topics that all individually are very powerful in itself, but when we link them all together, which we might do next week or at some point in the future, definitely, you can see how the world is set up based on money to hit us from all of these different angles in order to steer us in a certain direction. So we're going to jump straight into it today. I already said that this has been a series that we've been covering for a couple of weeks. This is probably going to be the last topic we cover. Next week, if we don't do a roundup, basically going over the last 4 episodes, then we'll basically move on to something else. But the fact of the matter is this, okay? When we think about some of the topics we've covered, it's really powerful because at the end of the day, money for a lot of people is the end goal. It's not about helping people, it's not about devotion to God or anything like that. It's about how can I acquire the most. And again, like I said, we've been on this theme for a couple of weeks, and 1 Timothy 6:10 is a very powerful verse because you can literally trace every scenario. We go all the way back to the garden, we go all the way back to Lucifer, and it was the desire for more, the desire to have something that wasn't his, and this is where the drama came from. So today we're going to be talking about food, okay? And it's really powerful, the things I've got prepared for you today. And some of the things we're going to cover in today's show are actually really interesting. Okay, so what I'm going to say is this. Let me just say this first. You may be thinking, well, we're talking about food. What does that have to do with a cigarette? And the fundamental thing I want you to realize first is that, okay, I want to be careful how I say this as well, because I obviously want to say things truthfully, but then at the same time, I'm not really interested in basically like professing things over myself. So I want to be specific in the way I say it. So the reason we've got a cigarette on screen for you to see right now is because it paints a very vital picture. Okay. Now, when I say we, I'm going to be talking about just the world as a whole, okay, in its entirety. And generally speaking, we're going to be talking about the Western world. But the fact of the matter is, we as Western civilization, as we like to call it, are addicted. Okay, we're addicted to food in so many different ways. Israel, what does that have to do with a cigarette? Well, let me tell you this quick story. Okay, so I remember growing up. Okay, this is a really interesting story. I remember growing up, and loads of people, even still like till today, people. But when I remember specifically growing up, seeing people smoke, and thinking to myself, why do people do that? Okay, now full disclosure, there's been different occasions in my younger years where I did smoke here and there. Nothing really serious, so to speak, in regards to cigarettes, but I did go through a little phase. But the fact of the matter is, I used to see loads of people from very young to, let's say, from probably about 15, 16, 17 years old. We'd see these people smoking. And I'd always say to myself, what is it with these people? We've heard all the stories about cigarettes, we've heard the rumors, we've heard all this different stuff, how it gives you cancer in the long run and it's bad for you, and all of these different things. And there was a certain period in time, okay, you maybe recall this if you're older, okay, there was a period in time where the laws changed in regards to cigarettes, and they had to start basically putting these labels on cigarette boxes which basically said smoking kills. And I remember when the news was coming for this, and I remember thinking to myself at the time, wow, the smoking industry is going to go out of business because loads of people smoke 30, 40, however many cigarettes a day, 1, 2 packs, and cigarettes are expensive. Okay. And bear in mind, bear with me, you're going to see how this all ties into food anyway. But we'd see these people smoking. I was thinking, you know what, the cigarettes business it's going to go out of business because they're literally going to be telling people that have been smoking for years, smoking kills. And most people are going to look at this and say, well, why would I smoke if I know this is actually killing me? It doesn't make any sense. So, over a certain period of time, they started basically filtering in this new law. And as time went on, we began to see these boxes all over, basically smoking kills. But you know what happened? The really interesting thing that happened is there wasn't a huge drop off in people smoking. And I didn't understand fully at the time, but as I grew, as I got older, and as years passed, I started to realize why. Okay, those people that were now seeing these messages had been indoctrinated to smoke for years and years and years. If you think about it like this, okay, if you've been smoking for 5 years, 10 years, however long it is, those of you who've smoked before and are watching this, whether live today or on the replay, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But the fact of the matter is this: you've been building up that habit, and we all build habits in so many different ways. And this is why it's interesting. When it came to the point that they were literally throwing it in our faces, smoking kills, the majority of smokers didn't drop off smoking because they were addicted. That habit had become so powerful in their life, although they knew it was damaging them, although they knew at some point in the future, okay, this is gonna come back to haunt me, come back to bite me, however you wanna say it. Although they knew, you know what, this is killing me, I wanna stop. In so many different cases, they couldn't. And it all came down to addiction. This is why the topic we've been covering for the last 3 weeks and today is really vital, because most of this stuff stems from money. Okay, why would I give you, okay, let me not even use myself, why would someone give someone else something that was harmful to them? One of the main reasons you'll see over and over again is the fact that it comes down to money. Okay, they want to gain more money. That's why they'll sell these things which are harmful to them in the long run. But they say, you know what, give me the money, okay, because I want to grow, and I don't care ultimately, or they don't care ultimately, what happens to the individual. And this is all based on money. This is why it's powerful. This is why it's key to understand, okay, the the journey a lot of these businesses want to take you on. This is why it's key to understand a lot of the things we watch, the journey they're trying to take us on, the advertisements they want to show us, because they want to lead us down a certain path. And if they can lead us down this certain path, we're going to do the things they want us to do. And in a lot of these cases, the things they want us to do, as you're going to see today in regards to food, is not exactly where we want to be. So this is why we focused on the cigarette first. And again, there's even more ramifications or more linkage in regards to what we're talking about. So we'll get into that just in a moment as well. But what we're going to talk about now is something really interesting. I'm going to give you some personal application, because the fact of the matter is, I don't want to just, excuse me, I don't want to just basically give you information and basically kind of like make it out like this isn't something that affects everyone. Okay, so this is what's really interesting. Why are we looking at McDonald's? Why can you see McDonald's? Well, let me give you a quick insight into some of the childhood experiences I have, which are really key involving McDonald's. Okay, and you understand why this is significant as well. So we're going to talk about really good memories that you look back at and you say, you know what, these were really great memories. These were memories that you would love to experience again if you could go back and live your childhood again. Okay, so let me give you one example. So when I was a kid, okay, on the weekends, obviously Monday to Friday I'm going to school, but on the weekends what we'd do is we'd all go, me and my brothers, that is me and my 3 brothers, older brothers, would basically go off to my dad's shop. Okay, he was running a business at the time, a printing business. And on these Saturdays, what would basically happen is my dad would basically go, normally a lot of the time he would take me as well. Okay, We'd go to McDonald's and we'd basically come back with this huge brown bag. It was this wasn't a common bag you'd used to see when I was a child. This was only a bag they brought out when you had a huge order. And we had a huge order. We're talking about probably about 6, 7, maybe 8 meals. Okay, and then you add in the drinks and all the other stuff, and you can see how it can actually garner into some huge bag. But I don't want to basically get into loads of the details because that's not really relevant into what we're talking about. But this was a ritual. This was a habit that we was running through every single Saturday. Now I look back at this and I say to myself, these were some of the happiest, greatest experiences, some of them anyway, that I remember. Why? Because I remember all of us being together. I remember all of us enjoying the food. And at the end of the day, um, before we get into whether this is good or bad for you, the fact of the matter is, um, anyone who's eaten McDonald's before would know that it has a really nice taste to it, okay, one way or another. So this is just one example, and I'm not saying it was just this example, but this is an example I can go to. I can go back to and say, you know what? Do you remember? I remember this so vividly. It was a great experience in my childhood because it was something we did together as a family, and it was weekly. Okay, we probably did that. I don't even know, for a few years before we stopped doing it for whatever reason. But think about what I just talked about in regards to the whole cigarette situation, the whole addiction, because maybe it wasn't just this. This was part of it. But growing up, okay, McDonald's was a place I visited regularly. Okay, and not only in the daytime. I remember um, talking to my wife. We had conversations over the last couple of weeks, talking about how we remember when our daughter was like in her first year, basically, of life. Um, and there'd be times where we'd go out, let's say, for example, 12 at night, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. We'll just drive to McDonald's, get some food, come back home, all that different kind of stuff. So this is stuff that is like taken from childhood, going all the way up to adult life, parenthood, etc. And the key thing about this is something that we started young. Okay, from a young age we went to McDonald's, and if you think about McDonald's marketing, even it's probably a lot better now, but even from before, you've got the Happy Meal and you've got all of these different things that cater towards children, because they know if we can get these children to come here, the likelihood is, because our food is so memorable, they'll continue to come for life, basically. So I used to do stuff like that. That's how serious it was. And these are just some of the things that I remember from a young age, which have got me to the point I'm at now, where I don't really eat McDonald's anymore. Okay, I can't remember the last time I had McDonald's, but it's something I've kind of moved away from for some of the reasons we're going to talk about in today's show. Um, what did we talk about a moment ago about the cigarettes? Think about how powerful, number one, McDonald's experiences, and two, obviously the marketing is, because the same thing that I discussed with cigarettes happened to McDonald's about, probably, what was it, about 15, 20 years ago. They All of these documentaries started coming out. Oh, look at what McDonald's are doing. This is how McDonald's food is made. This is XYZ McDonald's. And the same kind of thing ran through my head at the time. Well, wow, McDonald's is going to take a hit, but McDonald's is still here today, going strong. Because even if McDonald's, okay, was poison, okay, they've made so many people attracted to that food that even in a lot of cases where people are saying, you know what, I really shouldn't eat this, they still find themselves going through that drive-through. They still find themselves walking into those doors, because at the end of the day, they've been creating that habit from a young age, from Happy Meal all the way up into adulthood. And it's hard to break a habit that you've been doing for so many years. It's not necessarily something that you're going to turn around and say, well, I'm just going to drop this tomorrow. It doesn't always work like that. Okay, that's obviously going to be a rare scenario. But we've talked about some different examples. We've talked about cigarettes. We've talked about me personally from a McDonald's standpoint. Let's talk about some numbers. Okay, over the last couple of weeks, we've talked about different numbers, about different industries. Well, this industry is one of the most lucrative industries. I looked at different stats, and you can check this stuff out online on different websites as well. But based on just one of these stats here I've got for you, the estimations of the revenue for the food industry, food and beverage industry, net going into next year is going to top 12 trillion. Now, if you look at stats for this year, you're looking around 9, 10 trillion dollars, basically global, worldwide, and it's been increasing steadily for a number of years. So next year, if we're going to be breaking $12 trillion, fundamentally, the fact of the matter is everyone has to eat. I'm not doing today's show to say, oh, stop eating. I'm not even necessarily saying um, don't go to McDonald's or don't do this, etc. But the fact of the matter is, I want you to get a bit more conscious about the things you're eating, because if you can think about these things a lot more significantly, you'll be able to understand exactly what's actually going on. Some of you, I know, loads of people want to lose weight, but they can't. Okay, we'll discuss some reasons why. We talked about health and fitness from an exercise standpoint on last show. It's a great show for you to watch after this show, because it is all linked anyway, as I've kind of discussed anyway. But we looked at those figures already. We've seen that it's a 12 trillion, it's approaching over $12 trillion every single year. And why is that significant? Okay, let's find out some more insights into this. All right, so the fact of the matter is, this industry includes alcoholic beverages, non-alcoholic beverages, pet food, tobacco. Okay, so remember I said we're going to have that linkage again. Okay, it also includes grain products. It also involves meat, poultry, seafood, fruit and vegetable canning, pickling and drying frozen food, and dairy. Okay, so there's loads of different scenarios. There's loads of different things that are basically all encompassing in this industry, and it's really powerful when you think about just how this actually works. All right, so let's do this next. So what you can see now is what I've basically called um, the system of most profitability. Okay, and this is just a simple flow diagram for you to see, to understand exactly how things work. Okay, now we're going to look at things from two perspectives. We're going to look at things from the money perspective, which is what this whole topic is all about over the last month, basically, of episodes. Then we're going to look at the scenario of what's best for you, the individual. And what you understand very quickly is that what's best for you and what's necessarily best for these different businesses in the food industry's pockets and the bottom line are not going to be um, linked. Okay, you're going to see things veer off in two different directions, and when that happens, you'll start to understand how you find yourself in the position. And one thing I will say as well is we're going to talk about how you can get out of these scenarios as well at the end of today's show. So make sure you stay to the end for that as well. Okay, so we talked about this flow diagram, and the first thing we've got here is, look, we're going to talk about the system that's most profitable while you're on the go. Now, most of us have jobs. If we're of a certain age, we're going out, we're doing all these things, or if you work from home, whatever. Okay, we can throw in some other things as well as we go into it, but this is how things are set up. So most people that go out to work, most people that are out for most of the day, things are set up in the food industry to get you to follow this sequence of events that you can see on screen. Why? Because if they can get you to follow this sequence on screen, it will be in their best interest and their bottom line. Okay, money. Now you may say, why would someone give me food that you can also almost compare it to like poison in a lot of aspects? Because if someone eats poison, they die. Okay, if someone eats more and more of certain types of food, you may not die today in one day, but in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the line, all of that food you're consuming will now have taken its toll on your body. You'll start having joint pain, muscle pain, all of these different things, diabetes, heart issues, breathing issues, kidney, liver issues, all these different kind of things, and it all comes back down to a lot of the food you eat. All right, so this is the sequence. Why would they give us this? Why would they give you food that isn't sufficient, that isn't serving you? Because they can make as much money as possible by taking you down this sequence, as you can see right here. Now, this is the first thing. fast food. And what is a great benefit from a business perspective's point of view in regards to fast food? Well, the fact of the matter is, it's fast. Okay. So if I'm out and about, what I'm interested in mainly is how can I get my consumer what they want as quickly as possible. As soon as that becomes the motive, quality gets thrown out of the window in a lot of aspects. Why? Because in order to make food that's going to be sufficient for you, it rarely can be done relatively quickly. Okay, food just generally, based on just the nature of life, takes a bit of time to cook and prepare and then obviously consume. But the day and age we live in is we can get fast food. We can go to McDonald's, KFC. We can go to all of these different places. We can go to different fried chicken shops that are scattered all on loads of different streets that we can get food within seconds. In a lot of the cases, they've cooked it before and they're just heating it, keeping it warm. So when you come into the shop, you can get it and go. Okay. Now think about this. If someone's cooking you food and then letting it sit out and just continue to warm it, the more and more that food is just moving away from being cooked fresh, the quality of that food is diminishing. Now, even if they cook you the food right there on the spot, okay, maybe it takes a couple of minutes, they're going to deep fry it. It's not the best way to eat food anyway, but the whole system is geared to it. Let's get them in and let's get them out relatively quickly. Now, when they do this, what else does this mean? This means that the food can generally be cheaper. Why can it be cheaper? Not because, well, number one, it's because they're not using necessarily, they don't have to use the same quality of products. They're making something that takes a bit more time, okay, and takes a bit longer to prepare. Another thing that you need to think about is because they can sell much more of it, they can now drop the prices on it because there's so much demand. And this is now when we start getting into the vital things about what we're talking about today. Why? Because I can give you much more of this, much more of this stuff which isn't good for you, but I can make it cheaper for you. So you can think, yeah, I would rather go for this because it's quicker and it's cheaper, but it's not as good for you, and spending a bit more money might actually be more beneficial for you. But from a business perspective, if I can get you something quick and something cheap, that is obviously in my best interest, and I can make more money from you because you'll continue to come back over and over again. Now, the next part of this flow is it's unhealthy. Now, this is really interesting because we've talked about this already a little bit in regards to the poison aspect. Okay, we actively today have just made it acceptable to go to these different places for food and to eat from these different places, even though we know it's not the best, even though we know it's unhealthy, even though we know at some point in the future it's going to take its toll. But the fact of the matter is, because we like the food so much, we say we're going to continue to do it, and we justify it and say, because, well, it's cheaper than going the healthy route, so why not do it anyway? Imagine if someone came to you with some poison and said, you know what, I'll give you this poison to eat. It will taste very nice in your mouth. It's not going to necessarily fill you up the most, and I'm going to definitely have you coming back to me later on, or at least tomorrow, and I'll give it to you for $1. Logically, you'd say, well, why would I do that? But this is exactly what we're doing loads and loads of the time today. Now, this is powerful because as I thought about all of this stuff, I won't say it now, but it made me come to a really powerful conclusion. I've kind of touched on it slightly at the beginning of this show, but we're going to touch on it later on in today's show as well, as long as I remember, God willing, because it's a really great analogy. Now, the last thing in regards to this scenario is it's highly addictive. Now, if you take the first part of this sequence and you take the end of this sequence, these two things are powerful. And you can see how this becomes a rotating scenario, because you can get it fast, but it's also very addictive. If something's very addictive, what does that mean? That means you're going to enjoy it a lot and you're going to want to come back. Now, they understand this. This is why, going back to the story I was telling you previously about the whole McDonald's scenario, was I was eating McDonald's from a very young age. And as I grew older, because the food was so highly addictive, because it's got such a sweet taste, that even from a child's perspective, the more sugar a child eats, the more attracted they are to that food because it's so memorable. If you've ever given a baby or a young child something sweet, you'll see in a lot of cases how they react. They act very different to if you say, for example, you're giving them some fruit that isn't the sweetest, so you're giving them some vegetables, or even some, let's say, for example, like a potato or something. You give them a potato that doesn't just taste like a potato, they won't act a certain way. But if you now give them, like let's say, for example, a pack of sweets or a lollipop or a chocolate, you'll see they act very different. And think about if something's been happening like that from a very young age, you get to an older age, you're more likely to be captured and captivated by those things. You're going to have those great memories in your mind from, you know what, I remember when I was young and I was doing this and I was doing that, and all of these different things in these different scenarios were of real benefit to me. And you can understand how this actually all works. So it's highly addictive, which is obviously the first thing you need to understand. Okay. And it creates this whole sequence of events that people get trapped into. Now, the next thing for you to see, which is obviously really interesting as well, is this is, we talked about on the go, this is the system that is most profitable while you're at home. Okay. Now, again, let me just do this quickly, just to do a quick summary of what we just covered. Okay. So this is something that's really interesting. What I would basically want to just do quickly is this. Okay. The alternative to this scenario while on the go is, okay, let me go for a more healthy option, which can potentially be more expensive, or let me go for a more home-based option, which is I take my food from home that's prepared and I take it out, okay, which takes more time. Okay. So the two first parts of this flow are in contradiction to the alternatives. If I want to go for something from home that I'm going to prepare myself, it's going to take me more time, which is in opposition to fast food. And if I want to go for that option, or if I want to go for something out that's a bit more healthy, not only is it going to take more time, most likely than not, it's actually going to cost me more money in most cases. So it goes against the cheaper mechanism. And time and money are two vital things that the majority of the people today will forego in regards to whatever they want. Okay, so that's just one thing I wanted to conclude in order to wrap that sequence up. Now we go back to at home. Why is this important? Well, at home, what do we have today? We have a lot of people that are interested in ready meals. So I'm not going to spend loads of time on this because we've just kind of covered the whole on the go, which is very, very similar. Okay, you've got the fast food places and all those different kind of things when you're out. And the ready meals scenario, in a lot of cases, is basically the same thing. It's just a quicker version, or it's a similar, a more, maybe a little bit longer than the fast food, but not by much. And another thing I remembered as we started the show, which I didn't even plan for or even think about really, is not only have you got the ready meals, you've got the delivery option today, okay, which is really powerful because you can be on your way home from work, and you can call Uber, you can order Uber Eats or whatever it is that you're ordering, or go from a specific restaurant and say, you know what, deliver me the food. And again, the same benefits of the fast food is it's generally going to be cheaper in some cases, okay, or more specifically when it comes to the home period is it's focusing more on time. Okay, I can get this food quickly. I can put this ready-made meal in the microwave and it can be ready in 5 minutes, opposed to me having to prepare my vegetables, me having to peel some potatoes or cook my chicken or whatever it is. The scenario is completely different. It's all geared to how can I get this as quickly as possible, but at the expense of you being actually addicted, okay, which is actually really, really powerful. And you might say to yourself at a certain point, well, why would someone get me addicted to this thing, even though it's not good for me? Because it helps them make more money, and that is ultimately what a lot of these businesses are actually interested in. So after we go from the ready meals, what happens next? Okay, we've talked about how they're quicker to make, okay, and then what happens next? Because they're quicker to make, generally what we're going to be talking about is lower quality product. Why is it lower quality? Because the food is basically filled with preservatives and additional sugar added to it to make it last longer, to be able to make it stay in a fridge or freezer in that particular state. And they add in all these additional preservatives and sugars to make it taste better. So it's more memorable ultimately, and it's more highly addictive, as we discussed with the fast food. And we wrap this whole flow in regards to the high calorie intake. So a lot of the ready meals, a lot of the fast food is going to be a lot higher calorie intake than a lot of the foods you prepare yourself, with a more quality products that don't take as quick to make, but ultimately will be better for you and will be lower calories. Okay, so that's something for you to consider. All right. Now, after we do this, what happens next? These are two scenarios, at home and on the go. But this is really what the sequence really should look like. And this is what I call the system that is the most beneficial to you. Okay. Now, what does it start with? Well, excuse me. It starts with quality ingredients. Okay. And what you'll see, which is actually really interesting about this, is as you increase the quality of what you're doing, the money goes up. Okay. In a lot of cases. And this is truly by design. Because if we can we can separate this gap between unhealthy but fast food, the ready meals, all those different kind of things, and the higher quality food, okay, which takes a little bit longer. Okay, both of them can taste nice, but generally the foods that aren't good for you are gonna taste. They're gonna have a certain sweetness to them, which are more attracting than the food that tastes nice to you, but is of a better quality. Okay, both will taste nice, but the ones that are unhealthy are gonna be ones that just have a certain taste to them, which are more appealing and more attractive. Okay, so quality ingredients makes the price go up. And then what we have next is we've got more preparation, and more preparation means more time. Okay, so if I have to use better quality products and I have to actually go out of my way to peel some potatoes or boil some rice, or boil my chicken, or oven roast my chicken, however you're going to cook these foods, um, oven roasted lamb, all these different kind of things, it's going to take a bit more time. So instead of spending 30 minutes, 40 minutes to make a meal that is going to taste nice, is going to be fulfilling, and it's going to be better for you today and obviously in the long run, why don't I just bang a pizza in the oven, which takes 15 minutes and is much more calories because there's preservatives and there's added sugar and all these different things in there that are bad for you, which are just quicker. Okay, that's the dynamic we're actually rolling with. And after we go for more preparation, a lot of the time these foods that are higher quality are going to be no preservatives. Okay, so there's not going to be things in these foods that basically make the food last longer. And this is another thing that's really interesting, because when it gets to, like, let's say for example the home scenario, this isn't per se with the fast food, because you're out, it's a whole different ball game. But when you're at home, okay, if you can buy things that last longer, a lot of people are going to be attracted to that because they can buy it, and if they don't think about it, if they forget about it, they can still have it at some point in the future. If you start buying foods that don't have any preservatives and are more natural, let's say for example you're more interested in eating fruits, and you're more interested in eating vegetables, and you're more interested in eating things that are more natural, okay, you aren't necessarily going to be able to handle those foods the exact same way you handle other foods. There's certain foods you can just throw in the cupboard, certain foods you can just throw in the fridge and they'll last for a very long time. Other things that you buy, okay, you can put them in the freezer, but after a certain amount of time, they'll start to decay, because naturally those foods are meant to be consumed very quickly. But the difference in those scenarios is it's not food that's supposed to be consumed quickly in the sense of a fast food, which is prepared very quickly but is bad for you. These are situations where the food is made and in a matter of days it needs to be consumed, because if it isn't consumed, it will go off. Okay? And the difference when you think about these two things are, they take you down a whole different scenario, two different complete end goals. Because if I can go and buy some fruit from a market or from a supermarket, wherever it is, and I can eat that every single day, I'm not going to be addicted to that fruit. I'm not going to be addicted to those vegetables, because they don't have those additional sweeteners in there that attract you more to them. They'll be better for you, but that doesn't mean I don't have to come back tomorrow, is what I'm basically trying to say. And if I don't have to come back tomorrow, that means I don't have to give you money tomorrow. But they want you to come back tomorrow. They want you to give them money tomorrow. So they put these things in the foods. They make it very accessible and very quickly accessible to you. So you continue to come and actually make this food. So after the preservatives, you take the preservatives out, what does it become? The food that you're looking at becomes more satiating. And just to dumb it down to very simple terms, it's more filling. Okay. If you ever eat food from a fast food place, okay, the tendency that tends to happen is you may eat that food and it will make you feel good because the taste is sweet and it will remind you of the good memories you have of eating from these places, but you'll be a lot more hungry a lot sooner, opposed to if you have quality ingredients and you take your time to prepare the meal, as you can see, and then you're not dealing with foods with preservatives, it will actually fill you up even more. Okay, we're going to get to some examples in a moment and we can see this even in more detail, and I'm obviously again going to give you more personal examples, so it's not just me just talking to you and from a standpoint of, oh, I'm talking to you like this doesn't affect me. We're all affected in so many different ways, but it's about how we can get out of it. Okay, and the final thing is in this sequence of events in regards to food that's beneficial for you and me is it's not addictive. Okay, I think about different foods right now that I've been eating, which I like, which are good for me. They're not addicting. I don't wake up and say, "Oh, I want to eat this today," or "I need to eat this again today." Why? Because it's food that satiates you. There's no preservatives in a lot of cases. There's no additional sugar. There's none of these things that are gonna draw you back. Even and when I'm saying draw you back, I mean from a standpoint of an addiction. Okay, it's not just, oh yeah, this tastes nice, I want to eat it again at some point soon. I'm talking about I need this. There's some deep yearning, okay, in deep down inside me that wants me to go back to those places. Okay, these are the things I'm talking about specifically. So these foods aren't going to be addictive, and the problem for you is there is no problem for you if these foods aren't addictive. But again, the problem from the business standpoint is if you are not addicted to the food that I'm selling you, then there is no urge, there's no desire, there's no addiction, there's no craving for you to come back at some point soon and produce me more money. Okay, so just think about the things you're doing right now, and you can start to see how this all lines up. And you want to be more similar to this scenario, okay, opposed to this scenario or this scenario. Okay, when you're out, you don't want to be going through this scenario. When you're at home, you don't want to be going through this scenario. When you're out or when you're indoors, this is the scenario you should be trying to focus on. And I'd recommend you screenshot this, take a picture of it, send it to yourself, send it to your friends, because this is the scenario that's most beneficial for you today and going forward to tomorrow. And if you can put yourself in this position to focus on these kind of things, you're not going to be getting duped out of your money every single day. You'll feel a lot better, which we'll talk about more in a moment, and you'll put your body in a much better position to actually function the way it's supposed to. And we'll talk about some other things as well in a moment. But let's go to this. So let's talk about most people's daily routines. Okay, so first we're going to talk about breakfast. And as we go through all of these things, I want you to interact as well, one way or another, whether it's writing this down, writing it in the comment section, writing it in live chat, talking about this with your friends. But what do you generally eat for breakfast? Okay, what we've got here is a bowl of cereal. I'll run you through. I thought about this earlier on throughout the day. I was thinking, you know what, I can talk about what I ate today instead of just speaking generally. Okay, so you can kind of understand where I'm trying to go. Okay, the changes I've tried to make in my life, and the kind of changes I want my family to make as a whole. But it's not necessarily coming down from, oh, I'm the head of the house. It's more so I want to show them through my example and then let them pick it up themselves. Okay. So what I had today for breakfast is I just had a fruit bowl for breakfast. Now, this isn't necessarily just 100% the normal routine. What will generally happen for me is I might necessarily have some fruit for breakfast and something else. Maybe some eggs, maybe some oats, something like that. Maybe some toast. Okay. But generally, if I'm going to have toast, it's going to be wholemeal. Okay. It's not going to be white bread. Even though white bread was something that was really dear to me. I'll just put it like that and leave it there. I had a very dear relationship with white bread, but I've basically been able to wean myself off white bread. Okay, and it is hard at times. We'll talk about that more later on. Okay, in today's show, but at the same time, when it just becomes ultimately clear that these things aren't good for you, it's literally like eating poison that's gonna kill you at some point in the future. I had to make just some really key decisions and say, you know what, change. And again, I've alluded to this episode already. Last show we talked about health and fitness. So for those of you out there who want to lose weight, okay, make sure after this you watch that show as well because they're linked, okay? And you can understand how on this perspective the food is set up in a lot of ways to keep you addicted and to keep you fat. And the exercise scenario isn't ever going to work for you, and you'll understand why when you watch these two episodes together. Now, I'll make sure I post a link to that below as well so you can understand that as well. But the fact of the matter is, I had some fruit today. That was it. What did you have for breakfast today? Most people generally are going to have something sweet. So kids are generally going to have some sort of sweet cereal because the marketing towards kids is that kids aren't necessarily being marketed and advertised to in the sense of, oh, make sure you eat your fruit, have a nice satiating fruit bowl, have some really say for example, like eat some oats. Don't eat sugar puffs or the um chocolate balls or whatever cereal it is that your kids are gonna see on TV and say, oh, I want that because it's the most colourful and the most exciting. Say like from the standpoint of a child and even adults as well is what's actually best for me. So I don't really eat a lot of these sweet things for breakfast anymore, and I'm conscious of the fact that I said I eat fruit bowls, but what we're getting into specifically, fruit is obviously sweet in a lot of cases, but we're talking about artificial sugars and we're talking about natural sugars. Excuse me, okay? Let's say for example like an orange or a banana. They may have sugar in them, but it's natural sugar, okay? Which is a lot better for you than artificial sugar. So for example, like some cereal. You can eat some cereal that has additional sugar implemented into it, inserted into it to make it taste nicer. And if it tastes nicer, we'll have fonder memories of them. And if you have fonder memories of them, we want to do it again. And this is how we fall into the cycle of addiction. Okay. Now, why is it important what you eat for breakfast? Because if you eat something really sugar based, like a really sugary cereal, or a really sugary spread, for example, like loads and loads of butter, or loads and loads of chocolate spread, or loads and loads of jam, or whatever it is that you eat, loads and loads of peanut butter, the calories are going to go up. It may taste better, but it's going to be more highly addictive. Or what's going to happen to you is it's not going to be as satiating for you. If you eat the white bread opposed to wholemeal bread, okay, it's not going to be as filling for you. And if it's not as filling for you, it means you need to eat more. And if you eat more of this food, it's actually not as good for you. It's not as good for you if you're eating it in smaller portions anyway, but now if you start increasing those portions, it gets even worse. Okay, so if you eat those kind of foods, you eat those foods, you might feel a little boost and then you're going to feel a drop because the sugar is like a sugar rush. The sugar takes you up, and then after that feeling has gone, you just go straight down. They call it the crash. And since I've come away from these foods more and more, I've started to realize that my energy levels are a lot more balanced. A lot of the time before would be I'd just be up and down. I'd feel good, then I feel down, feel good, down. And I'm not talking about necessarily like life. I'm not talking about like depression or anything like that. I'm just talking about just your energy levels. You feel good, like you're really strong, and all of a sudden you just feel weak. Like you just want to lie down, you just want to sit down, you don't want to do stuff. Um, I'm pretty sure my wife has noticed over recent months just how I've just been a lot more active. I wanted to do a lot more things. Why? It's because I've got a lot more energy. Okay, these I'm not consuming the same kind of meals that I was consuming before that are kind of holding me down and holding you down. If once you start just making subtle changes and you start to see these changes, you'll start to realize you just got so much more energy. I remember. I won't even say what I was gonna say, but that's really simple. So how you start the day is really significant because if you eat the wrong thing, it's gonna take you the wrong way. If you eat the right thing, it will take you the right way. So, for example, instead of eating a cereal that's not good for you, let's say for example you eat some fruit, you eat some oats. Oats are gonna be really satiating. It's gonna fill you up. You can last longer on that food, and it's not necessarily something that it's gonna take you into the day saying, you know what, I need to eat more of this because it doesn't have those preservatives, it doesn't have those additives. And even one thing you could do is you can take the fruit, put it in the oats. Let's say, for example, you take a banana and you chop that banana up and put it in the oats. You're getting some sweetness, but you're also getting the thing that's rich, that's good for you, and it's obviously satiating as well. Now, it's not going to taste, I'm going to be honest with you, it's not going to taste as good as the sweet cereals. It's not. Okay, that's the whole point. They want it to taste like that, so you go for that option. But you have to find ways to find alternatives which are much more better for you and will actually make you feel better as well. Okay, so that's breakfast. Now, when we get into lunch, what do we have? Well, we've talked about it already. Most people are going to be out and about on the go. They're going to eat fast food. Even kids, for example, that go to school, they might have a packed lunch, maybe. They might eat meals at school. A lot of the things they're going to be giving at school are going to be fast food kind of options. Why? Because it's quicker to make, it's cheaper to make, and you can charge more money for it ultimately in a lot of cases because that's what people expect. What I had for lunch today is I had some chicken, I had some potatoes, and I had some salad, quite a bit of salad, and vegetables, some spinach, some carrot. Maybe it was just spinach and carrot, and I believe I drank it with some water. We're gonna get into drinks in a very quickly in a moment. Okay, so just we'll talk about that more. But that was my lunch. Okay, the chickens obviously it's good for you. It's obviously protein. Didn't have loads of it. The potatoes are okay for you. They weren't fried. They were actually, if I'm correct, they were boiled. And then obviously you can put them in the oven for a little bit. Okay, wasn't deep fried or anything like that. And this is coming from someone that is an avid chip eater. Okay, I had some potatoes and I had quite a bit of vegetables. Now again, I can eat that. What did you eat for lunch? What do you generally eat for lunch? Okay, think about it, write it down, talk to your friends, leave it in the comments, etc. I'm really intrigued to know. Okay, because that was what I had. And what did it do? It didn't propel me later on after lunch and say, you know what, I need to eat more. Why? Because those foods are really satiating. If I eat a lot of vegetables and a lot of fruit, those things will sustain you. If I'm eating, let's say for example, chicken, it's chicken. It was, if I remember correctly, it was grilled. Okay, it wasn't deep fried or anything like that. It's better for you. Okay. Um, the vegetable was just it's just vegetables. I didn't even have it boiled or anything. It was just straight out of the packet. If you buy it from the packet or if you just go to the market, however you get your vegetables, okay, you can just eat it like that because it's natural foods that will make you feel good. They will help with, let's say for example, going to the toilet and having those flushing out your system, which is actually really important. I'll even say this as well. I've for a long time, okay, um, one of the things that was really, let's just say weird for me, basically, I'll just say it in that terms is I didn't go to the toilet frequently. Okay, so imagine you're eating all of this bad food and it's just staying inside and it's not being flushed out. And it wasn't because I wasn't drinking water per se, but it was the fact that a lot of these foods aren't good for you. So because they're not good for you, they don't have the nutrients in them, excuse me, to make everything inside your body work the best. So I could go days without going toilet. And I'm talking to those who haven't really gauged what I'm talking about, but I'm specifically talking about number twos. Okay, I could go days without going toilet. But all the times I've eaten the right kind of foods, okay, it's strange to me if I don't go to toilet every single day, because I'm eating the right foods, the foods that are good for my body. They will take. So let's discuss snacks, because snacks are something that's really interesting when you think about it as well. Because at the end of the day, snacks are sprinkled all the way throughout the day. And let's say, for example, the best breakfast, like we kind of discussed. When you now get into the lunch you had, get into what you're gonna have for dinner, you can be sprinkling all of these different things all the way through your day and wondering to yourself, well, why do I want to continue to eat these kind of things if things aren't necessarily actually good for me? Now, this is a really interesting thing. I've talked a lot about water, or I talked briefly about water, and I was talking a lot about why what you drink is actually really significant, because at the end of the day, it's really significant in regards to what we actually drink. Full disclosure, I like water a lot, and I try to drink water as much as possible. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, I understand, I'm fully aware that loads of people don't just drink water; they drink loads of different things, which can obviously have different effects. And we've talked a lot about just the whole addiction standpoint and how a lot of these things are geared towards you actually not even um, really having much of a choice, in the sense that they continue to give you these things which aren't necessarily the best, but they put you in this position where you keep coming back for more. So what you can see on this screen is actually something really interesting. You can see how much sugar intake you actually take in from different drinks. And you can see the stats here on screen. I'll basically read through some of them so you can see what specifically we're talking about. But let's say, for example, like a Powerade, okay? And I know that's a really popular drink. You're talking about 7 teaspoons of sugar, okay? Really interesting. So imagine if someone came up to you and said, you know what? Why don't you just eat this? Eat this 7 spoons of sugar right in front of you. You'd probably say no. You'd say, why would I do that? That's crazy. But and they know that. But if they say, well, we can put this much sugar into a drink that you now take and you actually drink, and it's going to taste nice, and you're not really going to be thinking that I'm consuming 7 tablespoons of sugar, you obviously pay them more. You'll continue to come back. It'll be highly addictive, but you won't really understand actually what's going on, which is actually really powerful as well. Okay, so that's something that's really significant when you think about it from that perspective. Okay, now what do we see next? What about a Red Bull? We're talking about 6 tablespoons in a Red Bull. That's one example. What about a Lipton peach iced tea? 7.5 tablespoons. What about a Coke? We're talking about 9. Okay, 9 tablespoons. Okay, of sugar in one little 330 milliliter can of Coke. Now, Coke is a really funny one to me because I used to like Coke in a sense. The thing with Coke for me is I'm really the thing about Coke and Pepsi and some of those drinks are it's just intriguing to me that it's a black drink. Okay, maybe, and I think it's because I like water so much, and water is that transparent, clear kind of color. And then you see these black drinks that are fizzy, and you just think to yourself, well, what is that doing on the inside of me? That's something I think about a lot of the time. But the thing about Coke is, Coke tastes really nice. Okay, there's a really sweet taste to Coke, especially if you compare it to Pepsi. And this isn't an ad for Coke. Okay, it's far from it. But I've understood from a very young age, Coke has a really sweet taste to it, and that's what's really attractive to loads of people. But the fact of the matter is, you need to understand that in exchange, okay, excuse me, in exchange, in comparison, you're actually taking in 9 tablespoons of sugar, which is crazy. What else have we got here? We've got some coconut water, which is 3 tablespoons. We've got some their iced coffee mocha, 11 tablespoons. 11, okay, 2 hands plus 11 tablespoons. And we've got this Prima fruit drink, apple blackcurrant, which is 4.5 tablespoons. So imagine when you're giving your kids these little fruit drinks, you're giving them 3 tablespoons of sugar, and then you'll turn around and not understand why they're actually behaving the way they're behaving. Why are they so hyperactive? Why are they so crazy? Why can't they focus on one thing for a long period of time? It's because you basically drug them up on sugar. And that's how they're supposed to act. They're supposed to act that way because when you get that much sugar, you're going to have the huge uptick and then you're going to have the huge crash down. They're going to have kids that are going to want to be so excited, and then all of a sudden the kids are going to be like, well, no, I don't want to do anything. Okay. And these are just some of the different things that you can see here, which are actually really interesting. Something really interesting because we've talked about food a lot, and let's just talk about drinks. And the reason I'm saying this is because if you can understand what we're talking about in regards to drinks, it will make much more sense. You'll know it's even bigger in regards to the food, okay? Because the drink is just the addition. It's the complementary part of the meal. The food is where the majority of the calories are. So once you understand what we're gonna go through next, it'll be even more interesting for you in regards to um, thinking about the foods that you're eating, etc. So what do we have here? Well, we've got something interesting. This is basically what you have to do in order to work off the calories you're consuming in regards to these different things. Now, what you can see here first is you can see just a simple 12-ounce can of Coke. Now, the Coke is really interesting because we just discussed the Coke about it having 9, okay, 9, 5, and 4, 9 tablespoons of sugar in it. So not only having all that sugar that's gonna basically give you a sugar rush up and then the crash, okay, you're actually drinking about 140, 150 calories. Okay. Now, what would you have to do in order to work that off? Well, according to just to this data, it says you'd have to actually pilot a plane for a whole hour. Okay. So a can of Coke that you can drink in about 5 minutes, if not less, is going to give you the sugar rush. But in order to work off that drink that you've actually just drunk, you're going to have to do an hour's worth of activity in order to get around it, which is actually crazy when you think about it. Let's look at a 16-ounce Rockstar energy drink, okay? And there's loads of different energy drinks out there today. Monster, Red Bull, all of these different kind of things. They're going to have loads of the sugar. They're going to give you that energy boost and then they're going to crash you. But what would you have to do? You'd have to do an hour of Tai Chi, okay? An hour of physical activity, okay? Which is actually really powerful. Now, you can see all of them on screen, okay? Again, take a screenshot, take a picture, send it to yourself, send it to your friends. I don't need to go through all of them. I'll just go um, through one more, which is just the next one, which is the lemon iced tea. 270 calories in one drink, 20 ounces, okay? And what would you have to do? You'd have to do an hour of ballroom dancing or bagging up leaves and actually cutting the grass. You'd have to do that for an hour. So just to consume one drink and then to work it off, this is all the activity we do. And this gets right into what we was discussing last week about how the whole gym lifestyle in a lot of cases is working against you because of stuff like this. You can have the best workout and it still may not be beneficial to you because the things you're consuming are rapidly taking all of that work away. And let's not talk about athletes, okay? Because athletes, they're doing that professionally and they can do the activity, they're paid to do those activities. But the everyday person isn't doing those activities 5, 6, 7 days a week, 3, 4 times a week. So when they're consuming all of these foods, it doesn't add up. Even people that go to gym 2, 3 times a week, there's only so much you can do in a gym. You can always out eat your work in a gym. And that's what you need to understand, which is actually really vital. Okay. So that's the food aspect and the drink aspect and understanding how that runs. Now, what do we have next? Next, we're going to talk about portion sizes pretty quickly because this is something really interesting. And full disclosure, okay, I remember I was talking to my wife this evening and I was basically saying to her, I was saying, look, it's actually crazy some of the research I was doing and how it was actually even making me think to myself, that's actually crazy. This is how much we're supposed to be eating. And I'm like, can I imagine eating that much food? Like this amount of food is too little. And the reason we think like that, the reason, excuse me, my mindset is like that is because we've been trained for years and years and years to eat more and more and more. And not only through the things that have been advertised to us in regards to food, but because we've been eating the wrong foods for so long, you have to eat more of it to feel more satiated. And once you flip it, you start to realize I don't need to eat as much because I'm eating the right food that kind of fills me up and keeps me whole for longer. Now, I didn't mention, I said I would mention it, my dessert. I forgot to mention what my dessert was for dinner. So basically, what my wife gave me for dessert was, she basically had ice cream and like a kind of cake dessert. I didn't have that. I don't really like the cake, so I didn't really want it. But she basically made me is she put some yogurt in a glass. It was Greek yogurt with a chopped up banana in it, and there was just like some natural honey, okay, some organic honey, and it tasted nice. It didn't taste like, let's say for example, the dessert she was having might have tasted, but it was still nice, but it wasn't as much calories. And I could even eat more if I wanted to, but I didn't. Okay, but just to give you that context as well, that's something to consider. But portion sizes, okay. So let's see, and this is just something that I picked up from the internet. Okay, and this is for those of you that are interested in losing weight and you're looking at all of these different scenarios and you're wondering, why am I not losing weight? Well, this will give you some insight. So you can see, okay, let's say for example, I'm not going to cover all of these. Let's just cover some of them, some of the most popular ones that most people are probably affected by. So we've got chips, for example. I mentioned earlier on, I'm an avid chip eater. I don't eat chips as much anymore. Generally, the times I'll be eating chips today is if, let's say for example, like my wife gets chips from somewhere, and she might just drop a couple on my plate or something like that, and I might eat a couple. Okay, but that's generally how I'm going to be eating chips today. If it's not, especially if it's deep fried as well. So let's take chips for example. So 10 chips, just 10 chips, okay, is equal to 160 calories. Now let's just use any kind of chip shop that you might get chips from. Okay, any place serving chips. What place gives you 10 chips? Okay, you're probably going to be getting 20 chips, 30 chips, maybe in some cases 50 chips. So if you times this by 5, you're talking about potentially 500 to 750 calories in just the chips. And we know we don't just eat chips. Chips is the side. So what's the main? You've got a burger, you've got some chicken, you've got some beef, you've got some lamb, you've got a steak, you've got all these different things. But that's on top of the chips that you've just eaten. Which is 400-500 calories. So you add all that together, you're looking at 1,000 calories, if not more. And when you throw in the drink that you're probably drinking as well, the can of Coke, you're getting a sugar rush, you're getting loads of calories, and that's just one meal. So these are this kind of scenarios you're looking at where it says, you know what, if you're going to eat chips, you should be eating 10 chips. And it's crazy. I think to myself, imagine if I was doing this and I said, you know what, I'm going to count out 10 chips because that's the kind of portion I should be eating. I'd be saying to myself, well, how am I going to do that? Let's look at some other examples. So let's take the pizza, for example. Okay, pizza weighs about 160 grams, and you're talking about a third of a standard size dinner plate. Okay, a third of your plate is going to be 400 calories. So just eating a pizza that's a third of your plate, that's probably going to be about 2 slices of pizza. Okay, maybe just a little bit more. Is 400 calories. Well, we already know we eat much more pizza than 2 or 3 slices in a lot of cases. I remember when we used to get pizza quite a bit. Okay, we used to get all the Papa John's quite a lot. I could eat myself 6, 7, 8 slices. If you think about a third of a average size plate being, let's say for example, 2 slices and being 400 calories, you now multiply that by 3 and by 4. Where are you? You're talking about 1,200 calories, 1,600 calories. The average guy, they say, is supposed to eat just over 2,000 calories. So if I'm eating 1,500 calories, 1,200 calories in just pizza, what am I going to eat for the rest of the day? Do you think the average person is going to be able to eat 5, 6 slices of pizza and literally eat nothing else for the rest of the day? No. We're going to eat that in a few hours. We're going to be hungry. We're going to eat some more food like that because we're in that cycle and it's going to keep us in that scenario, but we're going to be eating so much more calories. Okay, so just looking at something like this is one of the key things I definitely recommend out of everything you obviously screenshot because it's really vital. It's just knowing stuff like this. Let's see another one. So let's talk about cereal because we talked about cereal earlier on in today's show. And look at what they say. They say, look, one handful, okay, one handful of cereal is about 30 grams. And they say that's about 120 calories. Now, I don't know about you, but I was never eating one handful of cereal. I'm probably eating 5, okay, handfuls of cereal, if not more. And if you think about that, then what you're talking about, potentially 800 calories, okay, or 600 calories, 700 calories from one little bowl of cereal. That doesn't even include the milk, which is probably another 1,500 calories. So you're talking about 800-900 calories potentially in regards to just a bowl of cereal, which will last you about an hour and a half, 2 hours max before you're going to be needing to eat anymore. All of the sugar intake we talked about earlier on when we was talking about just breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you can understand how all of this stuff is working against us. Because if you go and take one handful and put it in a bowl, you look at that bowl and you say to yourself, for fats, and the fats they're recommending our stuff matter is, I mentioned an analogy I was going to bring up earlier on, and I said, you know what, I'll bring this up later on as something, because at the end of the day, when you think about everything we're talking about today, what we're basically talking about is, when I thought about all this scenario, I basically said, what this is basically like is, this is basically like a drug dealer, okay, who's selling these drugs to a drug addict. And what the drug dealer basically wants is, he wants that drug addict to get more and more addicted, because as they get more and more addicted, they come back to you more and more often, and that drug dealer can now make a lot more money from you, because they know, he knows, she knows that the more and more you get addicted, the more you're going to come back to them, the more money they can make. And this is the same thing in regards to the food industry. It's almost like a lot of these businesses are drug dealers, okay, and they're dealing out their drugs. Okay, they're literally dealing out crack in a lot of cases, just the sugar, okay, which is equivalent. If you look at some of the studies, you'll find that sugar makes your brain act the same way in a lot of ways. It gives you that same reaction that crack cocaine does. Okay, so in a lot of cases, these businesses are like the drug dealers, and we as a population are geared towards, where driven, they want to steer us towards being addicts, and they are dealers in a lot of ways. And once you start to see this and you realize what's actually going on, you'll start to see that this isn't the way things should be, because the only reason they'd want you to be in that scenario is because of money. Okay, so I know there's people going through these scenarios right now. You're thinking to yourself, well, Israel, you showed me a lot of powerful stuff today, but I'm addicted. Okay, how am I going to give this stuff up? Well, the first thing, okay, what do they always say the first thing in regards to overcoming an addiction is? If you know right now, and I've been in this position before, literally saying to myself, you know what, these foods have a hold on me, and they have a hold on me that I'm not happy with. No food on this planet should have such a hold on me that it will make me and encourage me to do certain things, to spend money that I shouldn't spend on it, to go to places, to drive to places, to walk to places that I shouldn't, to be eating foods at certain times that you shouldn't be eating. If something has that much of a hold on me, it shouldn't. Okay? Especially as a Christian. Okay, we're supposed to be disciplined, discerning people. And yes, no one's perfect, but we should be, as Christians, striving to be perfect every single day. Okay, trying to be exactly how Christ was. And we do that through just the leading of the Holy Spirit guiding us every single day. Now the fact of the matter is this: if you're addicted, the first thing you have to do is you have to confess it and be open and be honest and admit it. I talked about this last week. We've done a whole show actually on this. I'll make sure it's posted down below, about how the truth will set you free, how the truth shall make you free. Now, I talk about the real meaning of that Bible verse, and I talk about in that video as well how I've actually used that scripture in out of its context ultimately to help me in different ways. But the fact of the matter is, what I'm saying to you is, you have to be honest. You have to say to yourself, you know what, I have an addiction. Okay, and the same way we might look at certain people, like someone who's addicted to drugs or alcohol, and say, why would you do that? You need to look in the mirror. I needed to look in the mirror and say to myself, the same person you're looking at, saying, how could you ever get yourself addicted to those things that are harmful? And not only can you get addicted to it, how can you not come out of it? The fact of the matter is, I had to say to myself, how can you even say that when you are addicted to food? You're addicted to certain types of food. And the fact of the matter is, the same way you look at them and say, you know what, their drug dealer is basically controlling them, I had to look at the mirror and say to myself, these drug dealers are controlling me. The food that they're giving me isn't in my best interest. I know it's not in my best interest, but I keep going back. I keep desiring it. Why? Because that's what the food is geared to do. Now, when you think about all of these different kind of things, it makes you realize just this is a really powerful situation. And at the end of the day, what you need to do is admit it and say, okay, yes, hold my hands up. Okay, I'm gonna hold my hands up and just say, yep, I've got a problem. That's the first thing you do to overcome the problem, is admit you have a problem. Okay, the next thing you need to do is something really interesting. And what I'm going to say, okay, I mentioned this last week, and I'll mention it again. What you need to do is get in the habit of praying, okay? Because if you pray, okay, the right prayers, you will see exponential results. I don't necessarily mean that the results are just going to come in day one. What I mean is, once the results start coming, they'll come fast. And it's not necessarily because that's just how it always works, but it's because once you start focusing on these things, once the results start, you'll start to see them in all of these different kind of places. So make a habit of praying. And I mentioned this last week as well. It was how I closed out last week's show pretty much as well. And this is how I'm going to close out today's show as well in regards to prayer. Because you can pray for 1 minute. Okay? Just 1 minute. Not hours, just 1 minute. Basically asking God to help you day by day, meal by meal, decision by decision to eat the right foods. And if you truly in your heart want this result, okay, God will give this to you. Okay, I'm certain of it. Now, if you make these prayers, and let's say for example, let's even go one layer earlier. Let's say for example, you don't have the heart for this right now. Okay, you literally know you don't. Then I'd say focus your prayers on God helping you get the right kind of heart to make these changes. Okay, and you take it in steps, but just take 1 minute every single day. When you wake up, the first thing you do, just say a prayer, okay? And I don't want us to be legalistic. It doesn't have to be like a ritual every day you have to do it. But at some point in the day, I just urge you, God, can you help me with this? And if you are truly interested in making these changes, I truly believe God will help you and you'll see results. So as you get to see results, get in touch with me, okay? Let me know, because I've been in this situation. I continue to pray about these things, even as I come out of it more and more. I don't say, you know what, okay, yeah, I've made it, I've arrived now. I say, you know what, let me continue to take the time to pray to God and just say, you know what, God, again, help me today, make it the right decisions, because you'll never know what situation you get in where different things are happening. Okay, so prayer is really powerful. It's something that has a real big effect, and it's something that can really make a difference. So firstly, be honest. Secondly, pray about these things actively, um, and start expecting results. So on that note, thanks for tuning into today's show. All the best, and again, continue to pray. And I recommend you watch this video right here next. Thanks and take care.